Okay, good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Hopefully you can hear me. Also, my colleague, I think she's ready now. We had some issues with the computer, so the computer just crashed right before we wanted to start the webinar. But now I think she's ready. Silvia?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Now it's fine. So now you can do your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and as usual, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and we try to going to answer them after the webinar. Okay. So with that being said, I'm handing over to Silvia, and now it's your turn.
Okay. So, hello and welcome to a new Express webinar from DYNAmore about some news, tips and tricks for the pre- and post-processing software LS-PrePost. My name is Silvia Mandel and I'm working for the DYNAmore company since 2007. I prepared together with the support of my colleague Pierre from our French office this presentation for you. I hope that this webinar will be an inspiration for you to improve or extend your methods for pre- and post-processing of LS-DYNA simulation. Yeah, okay, feel free to post questions in the chat and I will answer them at the end or after the webinar. So after a short presentation of the DYNAmore LS-PrePost support team, I like to explain the current LS-PrePost version status. The main part of the webinar are the recent developments, and I divided this topic in 3 chapters. I will start with interesting news for model setup, the pre-processing, then the developments for the post-processing of the simulation results, and finally, in the chapter miscellaneous, I will look on the other overall LS-PrePost improvements, and between some tips and tricks which I like to attach to this presentation. A conclusion to LS-PrePost developments at the end. LS-PrePost support team at DYNAmore. First of all, I like to introduce your LS-PrePost support team. The following 4 DYNAmore team members are working closely together to have an efficient international support network. The main DYNAmore support managers for LS-PrePost in Europe are Pierre in the DYNAmore France office in Versailles, David in the DYNAmore Swiss office in Zurich, Anders Stenberg in the DYNAmore Nordic office in Sweden, and myself from Germany office Dresden and Stuttgart. Please do not hesitate to contact us for requests, suggestions, or improvement ideas. We have a close and fruitful collaboration with LS-PrePost developers at ANSYS since many years. My colleague Anders Stenberg is also a part of the LS-PrePost developer team. This is a big advantage to check something fast in the code for a fast customer support. Next part, a version overview for LS-PrePost. It is still possible to install LS-PrePost without any license system on your machines, because LS-PrePost is delivered free with LS-DYNA. The installation package of LS-PrePost, which you can find in our customer download area, fileshare.dynamore, are available for the most widely used operating systems, Microsoft Windows, then the so-called common version for the different Linux systems, and also Mac OS. Some special versions are also available in our download area. For example, a double precision version or a new development version based on GTK3 interfaces. The current release version is 4.8. Since this version, additionally to the C-based scripting language SAL, now also Python scripting with many API functions is possible. I present today the main release notes of the current development version 4.9. Over hundreds of keyword data have been newly introduced or updated. Many new features are implemented. Most of the changes were coming from user suggestions. This development version 4.9 is also already available in our download area. The version 4.9 is free since February, and so we expected the official release for March 2022. So let us start with the main chapter, recent developments, beginning with the pre-processing news. As you are most probably aware, on the very right side toolbar, there are the main tool structures in the following way. The first 5 icons are geometry tools to create or modify geometry. Then you have 4 finite element menus, and below there are some special tools dependent on your input file. If you click on Mesh, the second toolbar with the sub menus menus are opening for the meshing. We start with a new meshing option in the meshing interface, element generation. In this dialog, you can generate element meshes on the basis of other already existing meshes. The developer extended the function in solid generation by shell thickness. If you like to create solid elements by existing shell thickness elements, you can now also transfer the initial stress and strain keyword cards to the new solid elements. Additionally, the constraint additivity cards are also created for the generated solid elements. So for example, you have a forming simulation process with mesh additivity and with different forming steps. You start with a gravity simulation for the positioning of the blank part with shell elements. And in the next LS-DYNA one, you like to use solid elements instead of shell elements with the adaptive meshed part with initial stress and strain values from the first gravity simulation. Then you can do this element generation step between the two simulation runs. The next point is for cohesive elements. Cohesive elements are used, for example, to model adhesives between two components. Element generation supports you to create fast and on a correct way these elements. Now also the creating of cohesive elements in between T-shell elements is possible. And the last news is a ratio option in solid by shell sweep by line. So you can see in the pictures, the yellow part has longer elements on the one side as on the other side. Let us go now to another interface to edit or to check mesh in element tools, element editing interface. In the slide before, I talked about constraint additivity keywords created by LS-DYNA ones with adaptive meshing. An option modify is a new option, trans adapt, which creates the transition elements between adaptive mesh and regular mesh. So the constraint additivity cards are removed. And another announcement is the solid element quality check option, show failed only, in the same interface element editing. After user put in a criteria, a limit, the element below that values can be seen by showing other elements with wireframe mode. In the element tool transform interface, you have the ability to transform, translate, rotate, reflect, project, or to scale elements. If you do this by copying elements or parts with new part ID, then the new option key property use the source part property for your target part, like material ID, section ID, hourglass ID. So now it avoids, after copying element to new parts, to define again the property of the new parts. It saves some modeling time. Additionally, you have now an input field to define the new part title and copy elements. This is here. My tip, the copy entity option is to copy also the initial cards of the elements. For example, symmetric LS-DYNA ones can be reflected in LS-PrePost to a full model with all results. In use for the find interface of element tools, if you search for a node, then you can activate the checkbox show attached element to highlight also the attached elements for the found node. And if you want to identify an element result value of your Q and fringe plot with the identify interface, then also it is possible to output the IP integration point number with the maximum value for this fringe plot value. The company Jason contacted us to improve the visualization of the beams. Jason are world-leading for fire and explosion safety consultants and provide a range of consultancy service training courses and software. Typical, a good example for fine collaboration between customer, DYNAmore, and developer. So the prism visualization started with the main menu view and then beam prism. For integration, beam has been revamped, showing the proper geometry. Various enhancements for element beam offset or orientation are well represented. And my tip, if you have a model with many elements, a huge model, and you can improve the rendering, the faster rendering with the next option in this view. When you beam prism fast, the beam will be drawn as a line until stop rotating, and the final picture will be beam prism, like here. Used for the section plane interface, which you can access with the VR model. They added a section cut function for beam elements, and shell thickness, T-shell and solid elements are now supported for the fright option. So for example, here in the pictures, you have a blue shell part and you can activate thickness. Then you see the real thickness of the shell part in the cutting view. And then you can output the geometry surface with the fright option and use this geometry information for follow-on processes. Coming soon, also the beam fright output for the section cut interface. My tip for this interface is, do you know that since LS-PrePost version 4.8, you can move the cutting plane by moving with pressed mouse on the cutting coordinate center. So isogeometric analysis is a finite element technology in which the CAD geometry description is used in the numerical analysis. The use of the IGA technology helps reducing the meshing and discretion time. So, and the news is that LS-PrePost integrated all of the new IGA format keyword cards, and you can access this via the keyword manager you see here. And additionally, for the IGA news, editing element, for example, refinement works with this new format. Twin solid is now supported. And yeah, of course, for the pre-processing, it's also interesting if you have to set up such a LS-DYNA keyword input tag, go to mesh, and you can create NURBS shells and NURBS solids via these menus. The creation of LS-DYNA keywords is not always very comfortable with the keyword manager. And so the LS-PrePost developer creates a create entity interface. Here, it's much easier to define sets or boundary definitions for your model. And new are that they improve the show option by assigning different color per load and per boundary SBC keyword cards. So for example, 4 load segments are defined now with different 4 colors, a better view. Also, it's new the visualization with arrows of load directions defined in boundary prescribed motion. Before there was only a point and not an arrow. My tip, you can animate the prescribed motion in your keyword card, in your input card under display entity. That's possible like you see here. Another more news for the create identity interface is LS-PrePost support create circle planes via entity creation dialog, and now they have a radius input option. So to create these database cross sections, and this is, for example, interesting if you have to define a cross section for a pre-stressed solid bolt or a solid screw, because you have to use for pre-stress the initial stress section keyword card, and therefore you need a database cross-section plane. Another new option, you can create discrete sphere element via this entity creation dialog. Very easy. The developers also improve the solution explorer more and more. The solution explorer is to create on a more easier way LS-DYNA input tags, and they show what you have to define really that you have a successful LS-DYNA simulation at the end. So it provides a complete model tree view, visualization of the tree items, error checking before run, and of course the automatic keyword output. And you have to select between different case types of LS-DYNA, structure, ICFD, turbo, or electromagnetics. And for the structure case type, for example, they improve that in explicit dynamics ones, the time step settings are supported. They add some new objects like general contact, to form, widget merge, unreferenced part, and more. They add an inertia data in the property of part objects, which will lead to inertia option in part keyword. Replace the old icons with some new icons and change the font size of the tree items. A new object called unsupported keywords is added to show some significant unsupported keywords in the current tree structure. They support to get correct pre-stress property data, and they added a keyword preview at the root tree item menu. For the electromagnetics case type, the AM module is added to solve the problems about electromagnetism. User can load an executable keyword file and FEM data, parts, elements, nodes by using the structure model coupling the AM module. And the EM module supported to do the following analysis: anti-current analysis, inductive heating analysis, resistant heating analysis. If you're working in such an area, you know probably these problems, Team 3 problem, railgun problems, or electric motor problems can pass successfully the test by using this EM module. For ICFD, which incompressible computational fluid dynamics, focuses on the solution of CFD problems. LS-DYNA, the solver may run as a standalone CFD solver where only fluid dynamics effects are studied, or it can be coupled to the solid mechanics solver to study loosely or strongly coupled fluid structure interaction problems. And for the solution explorer, they added the unit for velocity at prescribed turbulence conditions, at initial turbulence conditions, and XYZ load body options. Next topic are the post-processing developments. I have some news for the fringe plot options. For example, the option to scale the fringe plot values in the main menu settings, then general settings. Application ideas for the use of this option are, for example, to modify your values for a public presentation of your work, but you don't like to publish your confidential real result values. Or another idea is to convert, for example, the temperature values from Celsius to Kelvin. On the right side of the slide, you see the new stress value computed by LS-PrePost signed for mesostress. The difference signed means now the values are calculated in minus and positive, and not only the absolute value. Fringe plot options are also that you can fringe plot with isosurface view, and this fringe plot option supported now also the T-shell elements. The fringe plot interface now recognize also the initial temperature keywords in your input deck, and they reduce the components of the fringe strain components in the list of the fringe comp interface. In element tools measure, you have also another fringe plot options. Fringe plot the shortest distance between two groups of segments. And fringe plotting of solid thickness and thickness reduction expressed as a percentage if defined forming solid surface is present to define the two opposite sides of the solid. In LS-DYNA, you can output also the info files, which have the contact pressure and contact forces of your LS-DYNA run. If you open such an info file in LS-PrePost, then you can go to Post Vector and activate the option Force Resultant. A yellow resultant force arrow is computed from the currently visible force vectors in the info file. The resultant value and its components are also fed to the message dialog, and the checkbox is toggled on. Since LS-DYNA 9 release contains a new structured AL solver, the solver is dedicated to solve AL problems which use structure mesh. And LS-PrePost support measure points of the SAL mesh box. You have to go at first to the display entity interface and show the SAL mesh box, and then go to element tools measure and then select the measure item dist SAL points to measure your between or in the SAL mesh box. For the interface force file inputs, you have now a dynamic fringe label for special SBH or AL components. In element tool measure, is it new that you can output the tributary area for the area meshing in the message box. And there's also an option for the scale factor for mass area and volume output. Used for the SPH method of LS-DYNA, LS-PrePost support the fringe of SPH history variables, and in post output interface, it is possible to output SPH surface to STL format, and you can output the SPH mass in this list. My tip, the output tool is very useful for many different applications, and it's very often a frequently asked question topic in the support. My tip, you can output, for example, if you don't know what is possible in the output menu, output the node coordinates of the last or another animation state, or output the current strains and stresses in LS-DYNA keywords cards initial to use the initial values for follow-on simulation. I think you know the DYNAinf file. And you can output the current fringed element or nodal values and re-import with the fringe comp user option. So you can modify these outputted files with scripts or something else, and you can re-import it and fringe your new values again on your model. Then you have for the post-processing the trace interface to trace node, points, streamlines, paths, or center of gravity curves during your simulation animation. And new is a flow curve tracing tool. Since last year, a new option is added in LS-DYNA to write results to D3plot or D3part output file for deleted elements. So for example, you see it here in the curve plot. Sometimes it's for the user interesting, the really last value, and not that if the element is deleted, the value, for example, a plastic strain goes to 0. So if you use this in LS-DYNA, then you can activate in LS-PrePost the option ignore deleted elements flag to see these deleted elements to output the result values as a fringe component or in curve plots. In LS-DYNA, you can output the result values in ASCII format, ASCII files, bin-out files, or MS-ASCII files. Used for the bin-out interface to open these LS-DYNA result databases. If you activate a local coordinate system in the settings menu, then also the curve plots for the force is in local coordinate systems. Support for derived strain components like max, min, principal strains, effective strains. Then support for searching part IDs in Matsum branch. So the picture below, you can see on which way. So Matsum has sometimes many part IDs for big models, and you have to check the added mass information or internal energy of some special part IDs, then you can enter in this way a range, or you can select by one or multiple IDs with a comma. So for the BND out branch, there is an option ZID to select by ZID your result values. In the ASCII interface, support for the LOUT node global strain of ASCII reader, support for the DEM, discrete element method, pattern post-processing, and MS ASCII support for new components of ICFT point, and support for plotting XY data from EM magnet file. In post XY plot, you can open saved curve files. There are different formats possible, and you can make cross plots of your results. And if force is plotted against displacement, there will now be a red point to trace the values while animating through the simulation when timeline option of your curve plot window is activated. The feature is only available when the plot is created in combination with the result files, the D3 plot, such that the time scale is somehow available. My tip here, I present the possible multiple CSV data formats. There are 3 possible CSV data formats for this interface to open it in LS-PrePost. For example, your test results of your real test. And because there's no Unix standard for the CSV header, and sometimes it's difficult, how can I define the access labels and so on predefined. Then you have, this is the most common used curve plot window. It's sometimes a common curve plot manager or the old curve plot manager, but it's still the most used plot manager. And by default, it is pop-up activated in LS-PrePost, and then you can see this plot manager. And new is that for the filter operations via the filter tab, support for multiple curves for the force to zero option. So that is sometimes your curves don't start with 0, 0, and sometimes you like to force this starting point of your curves to 0, 0. And at first version only support for one curve. Later, the current versions can support for all curves on your window. They improve the history, news button behavior when no XY data is ready, and support for exponential to decimal value output. So you see this, you can activate this exponential to decimal checkbox, and also you can enter the number of digits. The output option at info tab has a new output line. It writes in the message box the part ID or the curve legend label of the curve with the maximum Y value. If you activate main here or go in the bottom toolbar icon plot manage, then you have you can start the newer 2D curve plot manager. It is main because in the main window there's also the curve plot visible. And in the curve plot window, you can show multiple ports of the 2D curves page by page. Also, modification of legend position is possible. A cross panel for crossing plotting of curves is possible directly here in this curve plot manager. And a template option to save curve plot settings, line color, line style, and name is available. New is that now the timeline also on the multiple view is supported. The support to make curve plot pictures in the no graphics mode is possible with this curve plot manager, and support for the DEM pattern post-processing view. In the main menu file, you can export your animations as a movie. and LS-PrePost 4.9 support create a movie at background. This is more quickly and to avoid the freezing the main window. Also, FPS, frames per second, works for the new movie format MP4. And in post output also information, you can suppress, or always it is suppressed, the output of the initial keyword cards for widget parts because it's 0. Miscellaneous news. Double precision. Building a double precision version for LS-PrePost isn't an easy job for the developers. Now the developers informed us that now a stable version is available, which can handle well both pre-processing and post-processing results. We recommended to use it only if it's really necessary for your application. In the LS-PrePost main menu, MISC are now an interface connection for MolText 3D import data. Mapping fiber orientation, tensor, volume fraction, or residual stresses can be imported. MolText 3D is a world-leading CAA product for the plastic injection molding industry. Then, improvements in the FemZip file import. The compression software FemZip can be used to compress on a high level with specific user precision the simulation results. LS-PrePost improves the animation velocity for such big compressed model data and also support now the loading of 8 node shell elements in the FemZip imported files. Nodal average and non-average thickness option for beams and shells are available in the configuration interface via display shell beam and then the option nodal average thickness. So then in the MISC menu, there is a D3 HSP view interface. The D3 HSP file is such as a main log file of LS-DYNA output. In the LS-PrePost, you can load this D3 HSP file, and on a structured way, you can see all important information. You can see in a structured way the warnings. You can also activate a display entity of problems, positions in your model. So you can see it in the 3D model, and you can see on a structured way some masses and many more. And new is that you can also compare side by side two loaded D3 HSP files. By the way, also the such implicit time information in your D3 HSP file can be plotted. So the time for the steps for your iterations, implicit iterations until convergence, you can plot it with this menu. Probably you know the D3 LSTA format. And if you like to have your plots in a D3 LSTA file, then you can output these in this way in LS-PrePost with save as D3 LSTA format. And of course, you can open this output again in LS-PrePost. LS-PrePost supports a bin out for LSTA fringe. And another information you can open to load multiple sets. It's an open interface of D3 plot. You can load multiple sets of D3 plot files simultaneously. So you have to go not always file open, file open, file open. You can do it in one step. And interesting function, my tip here for multiple D3 plot import. Changing the models to one model view is possible with post change model. So you can animate one D3 plot one after each other. And then you have also a split option for the main window to show multiple D3 plot models with post split window. And here are the possible configurations. And it is possible to, so for example, you have to compare different variants and you check one critical area in one DSP-plot animation, then you can activate these zoom and rotating and active parts for this for all of your DSP-plot models. Yeah, loading multiple models or keywords is also a topic for the model and select interface. With the select option, so you can activate which loaded models or DSP-plot data should be shown directly in the window, in the main menu to the same time, or you have the option compare. You can compare keywords or DSP-plot data. And if you compare keywords, you have now a diff part option, and is to color parts with difference between the two compared models. So if you activate, for example, model 1, then you see only the part with the difference, and it's colored yellow. And if you activate model 2, the same part is colored in blue. And the parts are automatically saved in the LS-PrePost selection buffer. And so follow-on process with these detected parts are very easy possible. For the subsystem manager, LS-PrePost supports multiply models and copy keywords between these models here. So you have many options with a right mouse click to move parts, keywords between different models. And so only here I have to say the so-called subsystems in LS-PrePost means the separate keyword files which are used in a LS-DYNA keyword. So I have a master file, and you have the subsystems, so a little bit the include keywords, the include keyword of LS-DYNA. Sometimes if you run an animation, you have a problem that the text overlays the animation and it's difficult to read. So legends and titles get some background colors if you want, so the backdrop for a better visualization. And in the configuration settings interface, there is a option test backdrop to activate this background colors, and you can change by a comment also the background color with backdrop color comment. One use for the geometry tools of LS-PrePost, you can measure in the measure geometry tool separation of face to face, like you see here in the picture. My tip, LS-PrePost offers really many different kind of separation measure tools. For example, also an element tools measure, you can activate the item separation or this part nodes to surface. And for example, it looks in this way, you can activate some tracers, and you can select between different kinds of the direction definition for your measuring. If it's the normal of the element or a global direction or something else. Yeah, other informations, Unicode is supported and needed by most platforms. They have a Linux, LS-PrePost 4.9 now is built also as a special GTK3 version too. And there's a special version currently available with a new ROE framework. That means that you can move and float and dock and so toolbars in your GUI. Yeah, my tip, there are also many nice options to modify your GUI toolbar design. And for example, go to settings in the toolbar manager. For example, you can use separate icons with your user pictures for the icons, and your user macro script can be executed via this icon. You can delete unnecessary default icons perhaps it's too much and you don't need the geometry tools, for example, you can delete it. Or you can move icons from the right toolbar to the bottom toolbar, and many more. DYNAmore supports more and more customers for such ICFD applications, and I like to show you this interesting application for post-processing of ICFD. It's a plot flows through an artery with the courtesy of our contact person Marco Fanni from the Biocardio Lab in Italy. You can see here's the execution of a LS-PrePost comment file. I will show you one time in this presentation, and to automate the post-processing process, making repeatable picture or movie views from special ICFD result view like streamlines or velocity vector plots. You can see that with the option in the MS Explorer, MS Post Explorer, multi-physics solver Post Explorer, you can select simple by checkbox, predefined multiple vector fringe plots and the related fringe selections, and also you see these are the comments in the list you have defined before in the script. And you see there's also a horizontal fringe legend with this Solution Explorer possible. So yeah, the Solution Explorer is that the developer makes it absolutely for this application, all tools from LS-PrePost in one access in the Solution Explorer. You can do it with this interface, everything what you need for this post-processing of ICFD animations. So, conclusion. LS-PrePost has been keeping up with the rapid development of LS-DYNA. LS-PrePost supported the post-processing of results and the pre-processing of input keyword setup for all kinds of LS-DYNA applications, structure, thermal, ICFD, electromagnetics, and many more. A main focus of the developers is to provide tools to make it more user-friendly and intuitive. Many features and capabilities were implemented based on user requests and suggestions. DYNAmore works directly together with the LS-PrePost developers, and customer requests can be discussed very fast with the LS-PrePost developer team. DYNAmore and the LS-PrePost developers would like to support our customers by improving and speed up their pre- and post-processing for the LS-DYNA simulation. The DYNAmore LS-PrePost support team and the whole team of LS-PrePost developers are open to advice and happy to listen to our customers for their needs. Meet DYNAmore and developers at the DYNAmore conference. The 16th German LS-DYNA Forum will take place from October 11 to 13, 2022 in Bamberg and online. The forum is the main event dedicated to LS-DYNA in Central Europe. So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to receiving your comments and questions in the chat or by DYNAmore support mail.
Okay, thank you, Silvia, for the nice, interesting talk. We are at the end of the session. I would like to thank you, everyone, for listening. Also, Silvia, for presenting. Thanks again, and I'm sorry for the delay at the beginning. But anyway, thanks, everyone, and see you next time.